Hey everybody, it's Evan, favorite bisexual. So today we're going to be talking about the penis size and the myths of the 6-inch penis size studies to debunk what is really going on here. So if you were to take a guess that the 6-inch myth is correct, well, think again. If you're a guy, you probably wondered what is average, what is ideal, and can you make it bigger? There's been a decade of bad science that's making it like an epidemic of bad information. Around history, the penis has been masculinity and power, and bad science has contributed to. And people reported that the basic length of a penis was about 6 inches, and this was backed up by studies in the 1990s and onward. And that's why the average of 6 inches or more was about average. That set in because of these studies. But could all of the studies be wrong? But then when people added the research together, they noticed that the measurements and the information that was given from other countries or multiple countries all put together, they noticed that the data was not the same. It was pretty much different measurements in all the other countries. So then they started questioning why all of these measurements were different depending on the country. Now there's a lack of measurements, and now there was a lot of self-reporting. And when people were self-reporting, people over-exaggerated a lot. But then they did something different. They started measurements by a professional, probably a nurse or something like that. And they started taking some measurements, and then they realized that the self-measurements were different from the clinical measurements. So they kind of put out that they were bigger than they really were. So then that kind of took the research and messed everything up because all the numbers didn't match. So then so self-reporting is extremely unreliable. And they can't get the results each time because they were asked to measure more than once and they didn't get the same results each time. So that means that they weren't measuring correctly to begin with. Like where to place the ruler and how to measure. So then it was published to how to measure accurately. So with that, they had to throw away a lot of the data that was previously took. So then they started recording men off the streets and asking them what their measurements were, and a lot of them said it was about between 6 and 10 inches. And then they were doing some measurements on flaccid and erect. And for the erect penises, they actually injected them with something inside their penis to make them erect, which is bizarre to do that. Maybe that was so that there was the same amount of erectness, because you can be erect, but there's erect, and then there's erect, soft erect, if you know what I mean. So then you had volunteer people. So the people that volunteered, they were probably more well endowed because the people that volunteered probably weren't below average. That could be like a thing between the two. So some people said that it was 7 inches, others 8 inches, some 9 inches. So it seems like men just want to compete against the other guys, so they try to make measurements larger than what they thought the other guys would be, just to measure up over the other person. And there's a ridiculous study that gay men's penises are larger than straight men. And this was a study that was conducted, but it wasn't really something that was actually accurate or that was foolproof, because that just doesn't make any sense at all whatsoever. So that study was kind of dismissed. What is really the average penis size? The researchers measured it and documented it. So the researchers' measurements were erect was 5.42 and self-reported was 5.57. So even though it's not a large difference, there still was a slight difference. And erection size does make a difference because there's a grower, then there's a shower. All right, there's some men that are small, but when they get erect, their sizes increase by 7% more, while others that are large that get erect only increase maybe 1 to 2%. So that's why that all the measurements were pretty much done erect to get a more precise measurement of the penis size, because if you were to measure it non-erect, the numbers are all over the place. So that's why the studies were inaccurate in some senses, because they were measured non-erect. The 6-inch myth and a lot of bad science has misinformed a lot of people. And there's actually 58% of men that are unsatisfied with the penis size, which is an extreme amount of people. What is there to blame for this? The biggest thing to blame is adult films and the adult industry, because they perceive that average is about 10 to 8 inches. If you ask some men what average is and some women what average is, they reported that average is like 8 to 9 to 10. And even some people said ridiculous things like, oh, average is like 12, which is really crazy. So all of these things that people have said that, oh, average is 8 to 9 to 10 inches, that made most men feel like they were too small and that they were dissatisfied with their size based on the information that was given in all of these false clinical studies. And that made men engage in risky lengthening procedures. Now, educating men in what's really normal and what's average, educating them in that will help them with their mental health and stuff like this. So what it comes down to is that what's actually accurate and real and what's false and fictionalized through social media is completely different. So before that you put yourself down and think that you're not adequate, just think about it this way. Men lie about their penis size all the time. So if somebody says they're 13 inches long and you might only be 3 inches long, chances are, unless you see them, they're probably lying. Because in the studies that were made through clinical trials where men self-reported, almost 90% of them self-reported false. So let that help you out. This is Ivan. Hope to catch you in the comments. See you later.